Let's learn some new nouns all throughout Joel's house. When we first enter, we find a large hall. This giant entryway could take us either to his living room to the left or upstairs where the ballroom and library are. But first, let's look around right here a little while. Joel's words for physical items are stored in this hall. Down on the carpeted floor to the left, Joel has a few cosas scattered around, his coasters from the kitchen. Now, why are they here? Didn't we already learn these in the kitchen as an abstract noun? Well, if you think about it, the word cosa, or thing, can be either an abstract noun or a physical noun, just like in English. When I say, I have a few things in my pockets, I'm probably referring to physical objects that are in my pockets, which is why these cosas are here in the hall for physical items. But when I say, there are many things wrong with your plan, I'm instead referring to something abstract, which is why cosa is also in the kitchen, where we store abstract nouns. Another physical object that might be in my pockets is money. On the right side of Joel's hall, an arrow has struck the wall above Joel's window. This arrow was carrying a bag of money. What happened here? Apparently, Robin Hood has paid Joel a visit. He very mistakenly thought that Joel was a poor man, and he decided to gift Joel with this bag of money using an arrow, as might be Robin Hood's style. Joel is actually a wealthy bee, but he's not complaining. He'll take all the money he can get, even if it's delivered by arrow. Joel's word for money is dinero. Now let's go on to the next room. We'll turn through the door on our left and see who might be in Joel's living room. Joel's family is visiting today. His parents are sitting on his couch, and he calls them ma and pa. Well, actually, he has two versions of words for his own parents. The more formal-sounding mother and father are madre and padre. But the less formal, equivalent to mom and dad in English, are mama and papa. In each case, the stressed syllables are ma and pa. So you're going to say mama for mom or madre for mother. You'd say papa for dad or padre for father. Beneath the feet of Joel's mom is a small bee girl. She's trying to fly away, but her mother's feet are holding her down. Of course, when a tiny bee is being held down and trying to fly, its wings always make a pathetic high-pitched buzzing noise that sounds like ee. The word for daughter is hija. Sometimes Joel's dad tries to trap Joel under his feet as well, in which case Joel would make the e sound as well. The word for son is hijo. Note that these words are organized by how we're going to position them in the scene. Females are on the left, and males are on the right. In Joel's household, children are subjected to parents, so we have the bees below the parents. When Joel wants to say children in the sense of sons and daughters, the word he uses for all of them together is hijos. To say parents, he says padres. So imagine the hijos just below the padres. Now, technically speaking, we're going to use the masculine plural even when it's a mixed group. To say my parents, Joel says mis padres. There's one more person here in the living room, and that's Joel's friend, the lizard. Joel's dad wonders what this lizard is doing in Joel's house, and Joel responds, "Oh, he's my best friend. He goes with me wherever I go." To shorten this, he uses the words me and go in the word amigo, which means friend. For example, I'll help you with that since we're friends. That would be, I'll help con eso, ya que somos amigos.
Te ayudo con eso, ya que somos amigos.
Joel's family is here today because they've gathered to watch one of Joel's stage productions. let's turn to the stage and we'll see again the hombre, the señor, and the uno on the right side of the stage. There's also a new guy. He's an odd-looking dude with a teapot for a head, and Joel calls him a tipo, which means guy or dude. In this play, the guy is really weird and is basically skateboarding off the stage, which Joel finds funny. He likes making fun of people and calls them tipo, very informally. On the left side of the stage is a person who looks a lot like the hombre, but she has a lot more hair. This is how Joel knows that she's a woman. He sometimes has trouble telling human males from human females, so he insists that in every stage production, the women must have much more hair than the men. For this reason, his word for woman is mujer. Note that Joel's word for woman, mujer, can also mean wife. For example, to say the man and his wife too, Joel might say, el hombre y su mujer también. To the left of the entire stage, there's a poster on the wall advertising an upcoming play. This play will have an all-new cast with people that Joel is very picky about. He insists that the people in the play must be the people that he likes. He's drawn a picture on this poster of all the types of people that he likes: reptiles, birds, insects, and some humans. Joel says, "These are the people that I want in the play." When he wrote all these names on the poster, he wrote them in the shape of a giant hen. So if you just glanced at the poster, you'd think you were looking at a big hen, and then if you looked closely, you would see all of the names of the people. Joel's word for people is gente. Now note that the word gente is actually a singular noun. For example, the people would be la gente. Here's a sentence example. Bad people stole everything, and she had to leave. Gente mala stole todo y tuvo que leave.
Gente mala se llevó todo y tuvo que irse.
Let's turn back away from the stage and leave Joel's family to themselves. If we continue along, we'll go through a dining room, which is where Joel stores all his feelings. We don't have to learn any of these today, so we'll just pass through on our way to the kitchen. The way that Joel organizes his kitchen is extremely important for our use of abstract nouns. We've already learned that Joel's cosas are on the island in the middle of the kitchen. This word can be used in many ways, and it's pretty intuitive because the word things is the same in Spanish as it is in English. But we also learned that favor is on the counter behind the island. This is because this is the counter where we store things that you do specifically. For example, you can do a favor for someone, or you can do work. Of course, Joel isn't a fan of doing work. Whenever Joel's chef needs extra help in the kitchen and asks Joel for assistance, perhaps in chopping up some food for dinner, Joel shouts, "Bah, humbug, I would never do work." Joel's word for work is trabajo, with the stress on ba, trabajo. So just imagine a sheep's leg that the chef is trying to chop up, but Joel says ba to the idea of helping chop that up. Here's a sentence example. And did he like his work a lot? Now, for this, we're actually going to use, and was his work pleasing to him a lot? So to him is le. The sentence is, y le was pleasing mucho su trabajo.
¿Y le gustaba mucho su trabajo?
Now, although these words on the counter, favor and trabajo, are considered things that you do, the things that are in the cabinets above the counter are things that you have. For example, you can have an idea, or you can have a problem. In the cabinets to the left, Joel keeps light bulbs, but these aren't for lighting his house. Instead, they serve more as thinking caps. He shines these lights on his head when he's trying to come up with good ideas. The word idea, which is spelled just like the English word idea but stresses de, shows that he always associates good ideas with the daylight, even when that daylight comes from light bulbs. So think una idea, an idea. Joel also has a painting of the sun on the back of one of these cabinets. But this is very inconvenient for the chef, because whenever the chef tries to put dishes here, Joel gets angry and says, "Don't block the sun." If the chef asks Joel, "Why does this painting of the sun have to be here?" Joel always says, "I have my reason." Now, Joel's word for reason is razón, with a stress on son. This word is used for a lot of purposes in Spanish, largely in arguments. So make sure to associate razón with Joel insisting that he's won this argument about the painted sun. Now, here's why razón is associated with arguments. Joel almost never admits that someone else is right about something unless he can see their logic laid out for him. If he is forced to admit that someone else is right, the way that he actually words this is to say that they have reason, or razón. In fact, the most common way to say, "you're right," in Spanish is literally, "you have reason," or tienes razón. For example, "You're right, this book is the best." Tienes razón. Este book es lo más.
Tienes razón. Este libro es lo más.
Those cabinets were to the left. On the right side of the cabinets, there's a chef's hat that's been burnt almost to ashes. The chef's hat caught fire during a strange experiment that Joel was conducting as the chef tried to cook. Of course, it was entirely Joel's fault, but Joel insisted on blaming the chef. He said, "Your hat's on fire? That's not my problem. I blame you. It's your problem, not mine." Joel's word for problem puts a stress on blame. So the word is problema. It's very obviously similar to the English word problem, but with an A at the end. But in Spanish, the stress is on the syllable that sounds like blame, problema. Note that this is on the right side of the kitchen, so it's a masculine noun. A problem would be un problema, or the problem would be el problema. Here's a sentence example. I had a problem. Tuve un problema.
Tuve un problema.
I had an idea would be tuve una idea.
Tuve una idea.
She had a reason, of course, would be tuvo una razón. Inside of Joel's freezer, we've already learned the word verdad for truth. This word is often used after the word de, so de verdad means of truth or truly. Another word that's typically preceded by de is acuerdo. This is a word whose stress sounds kind of like weirdo. So Joel and the chef often disagree with each other, as you've probably figured out, and they insult each other all the time, but they agree on one thing. They're both weirdos. This is the one subject on which they're in agreement. So inside the freezer, they've painted pictures of each other's faces, one on top of the other, in a very weird way. This represents the word acuerdo, and it's used specifically in the phrase de acuerdo, which is an idiom that means in agreement. This phrase is often used as an exclamation just to say, "I agree," or concurred.
De acuerdo.
Now let's go up Joel's stairs. The biggest room upstairs is the ballroom. We've already learned the words tiempo, día, and año on the right side, and to the left we've learned vez and noche. Now, although there are some años or onions hanging on the right side of the ceiling, there's something else on the left side of the ballroom ceiling, colored lights. Joel likes to use special mood light in his dance parties creating an individual aura, as he says, based on what time it is. Each hour, the aura changes, and Joel's word for hour is hora. When Joel asks what time it is, he's thinking in terms of these colored lights, and so it's an easy question to answer simply based on what aura is currently shining. In other words, to talk about clock time, Joel doesn't use time or the words found in the middle of the room like ves or tiempo. Instead, he always thinks in terms of hora. So he asks, for example, what time is it? As ¿qué hora es? To say what time was it, he would say ¿qué hora era? Now, when Joel's talking about at what time something happened, he uses the preposition a, or the letter A. So literally, instead of asking at what hour, he asks to what hour something happened. For example, to say, you can come at that time, he would say, you can come a esa hora.
Puedes venir a esa hora.
At the bottom of each of the ballroom windows is a bunch of tar. This tar melts and drips down the wall when it's late in the day, and Joel's word for afternoon is tarde. Between these windows on the left side are some smaller windows that look like yawning mouths. Joel's parties often go extremely late, but he knows it's morning when the sun begins to shine through these yawning mouths. He can also tell because some of his guests start yawning. The word for morning is mañana, so that stresses the syllable yan. Mañana actually both means morning and means tomorrow, as we saw at the grain stand. This is because Joel thinks that morning and tomorrow arrive at the same time when the sun shines through the yawning mouths. So they basically both mean the same thing, mañana. Here's a sentence example. At home, there's never anyone during the mornings. This is literally stated as, at home, never there is nobody during the mornings, or en casa nunca hay nadie por las mañanas.
En casa nunca hay nadie por las mañanas.
As an alternative to say, at home there's always someone there during the afternoons, you could say, en casa siempre hay alguien por las tardes. On the right side of Joel's ballroom, the floor has mint candies all over the place. So the floor is kind of checkered, black and white, and on each of the black squares, there's a little mint candy. These mints make a small cracking sound each time someone steps on them, which, as you might imagine, happens pretty frequently. If you were dancing in a strangely lit room, you'd probably step on the mint candies pretty frequently. For Joel, when something happens this frequently, he says that it happens every moment, or todo momento. The word momento, with a stress on ment, like mint, means moment, and it's a very frequent word in Spanish. An easy example is, Dad and Mom are arriving at any moment, or Papá y Mamá arrive en any momento.
Papá y mamá llegan en cualquier momento.
Another more idiomatic way to use the word momento would be when Joel thinks that it's time to do something. He often says that it's the moment of doing something, or el momento de doing something. For example, to say it's time to leave, he would say es momento de leave.
Es momento de irse.
It's time to have something else would be es momento de tener algo más. We have just a couple more common phrases to learn that involve time nouns. Joel is a quirky bee, and all of his greetings are congruent with his quirkiness. So Joel rarely says good morning or good evening. Instead, he says good days or good evenings. So for example, to say good morning, he would actually say buenos días.
Buenos días.
Good afternoon is buenas tardes.
Buenas tardes.
And good evening or good night is buenas noches.
Buenas noches.
To say sometimes, Joel likes to say at times. Now remember that usually time uses the preposition a, or to, rather than en for at. So sometimes is a veces. For example, sometimes I think that I'm going to be able to enter. That would be a veces I think que voy a be able to enter.
A veces pienso que voy a poder entrar.
The next room is Joel's library. Previously, the only thing that we looked at here was his casa, the house-shaped bookshelf that cost a lot of money. This is on the left side of the library. Above the casa is a big window that's divided into small parts or panels. Joel likes to stain these parts of the window different colors to represent individual places in his own house. So this window ends up looking like a map of his house, with the different rooms or parts of the house represented by different colors. The word parte means place, at least in one sense. Actually, Joel has a few different words for place, but this one is generally used when he's referring to the different parts of a larger place. For example, if Joel is looking all over the window for the color yellow, he might say, I looked at every part of the window, but I couldn't find yellow. To say every part or every place, he would say toda parte. This word, parte, is very often used along with indefinite adjectives, the ones that we learned on Joel's driveway. I'm going to give you a sentence example with parte, and I want you to try several different indefinite adjectives, all right before the word parte. So for our original example, it's we went to another place. That would be fuimos a otra parte. We could change otra out to muchas for many. We went through many places. Fuimos por muchas partes. How about he found it in several places? That would be lo he found en algunas partes. He found it in each place would be lo he found en cada parte.
Lo encontró en cada parte.
As I mentioned, parte is just one of a few different words that Joel uses for the English word place. Another word for place can be found on the right side of Joel's library. Joel has a giant atlas, and strangely enough, his atlas has a picture of his own blue car on the cover. There's a very personal reason for this. Joel likes to look through the atlas for places that he'd like to go someday. If the place is boring, he says that he would go there in his otro car. But if the place is really interesting, Joel draws a picture of his blue car on the page. He imagines that someday he might actually drive his beautiful blue car to that place if the place is special enough. So for Joel, if a place is special enough, he associates it with his blue car, and his general word for place is lugar. Meanwhile, Joel also has a globe on his desk on the right side of the library, but it's not a globe of Joel. This globe actually represents planet Earth. However, the globe is constructed from a pale, doughy substance, so Joel's planet Earth actually looks like the surface of the moon. This is due to bad education. In Joel, children are taught in schools that planet Earth is made of moon dough. This makes Earth sound very unattractive, but for this reason, Joel's word for the world is el mundo. In another world would be en otro mundo.
En otro mundo.
Let's also learn an idiom involving mundo. To say everyone, Joel often says todos, but sometimes to exaggerate how many people he's talking about, he says all the world or todo el mundo, even if it's restricted to a small number of people. For example, everybody in the place might be todo el mundo en el lugar. Here's a sentence example. Everyone in the city goes to that place. Todo el mundo en la city va a ese lugar.
Todo el mundo en la ciudad va a ese lugar.
From the library, we can get straight into Joel's bedroom. Here, we encounter some small pieces of money on the floor between the toads. These little rolled-up yen bills give Joel comfort every morning. When he puts on his slippers and gets out of bed, he wants the first thing that he feels to be money. So this tiny bit of money pokes his feet through his slippers as he walks through his room. Joel's word for a little is un poco. Just like the other words on the floor, like todo and mucho, this is a word that relates to an amount of something. If Joel has all of something, that's todo. If he has much or a lot, that's mucho. But if he only has a little, that's un poco. For example, with a little bit of time would be con un poco de tiempo.
Con un poco de tiempo.
Now let's turn our attention to Joel's blankets. On the left side of Joel's bed, the blanket is divided into small parts like a pie. Joel sleeps under different parts of the blanket depending on what type of dream he wants to have, and his word for part is parte. Of course, we just learned this word in the library as well. It can be used to mean either part or place. On the sides of Joel's bed are two nightstands, one on the left and one on the right. On the left, we've already learned the word vida, for life. But on the right side, there's a garden gnome holding a teapot. This teapot functions as Joel's alarm clock. Every morning, he wakes up to the smell of tea brewing. And it's always a surprise because he never knows what type of tea it's going to be. Now, the word for type, or kind, is tipo. We also learned the word tipo on the stage to mean guy or dude, which is a very informal word. But this word, tipo, for type, is a pretty standard and common word and can be used in formal settings. Meanwhile, the gnome that holds the teapot doesn't have a name. Every time Joel asks the gnome, "What's your name?" the gnome brays loudly, kind of like the mule on the stage. Joel's word for name is nombre, so you can just imagine the gnome braying like a mule. Nombre. Before we leave Joel's room, let's take careful note of how these words are used. The words on the nightstands are aspects of something. Something can have a name, a life, and a type. So that would be un nombre, una vida, and un tipo. We'll learn more of these aspect words, such as number, color, value, and position. But vida, nombre, and tipo are the most common. I'll give you the name of the place. That would be I'll give el nombre del lugar.
Te daré el nombre del lugar.
Now make sure you're able to write down a list of all of your nouns from memory listed by category. Physical nouns in the main hall, person nouns in the living room and on the stage, abstract nouns subdivided into the kitchen subcategories, time nouns in the ballroom, location nouns in the library, and part and aspect nouns in Joel's bedroom. Then it's time to practice using all of these words idiomatically.